Yo, what's going on? This is the Too Tall Sports Podcast. Thank you for joining me for our weekly episode. Appreciate you being with me today. Got a huge guest, which we will get to in a second. He is Mike Martz, and you may know him if you remember the greatest show on turf with the St. Louis Rams back then in the 99 season. Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce. Mike Martz was the offensive coordinator and one of the architects of the greatest show on turf when the St. Louis Rams won the Super Bowl. He is my guest today. So huge guest. Stick around for that interview. I got to give you my 2 cents though. So let me start with a few things that I want to hit, and then we'll get to Mike Martz. I want to talk about the NBA 75th anniversary list. I'll kick it off with that. Maybe a little Dodgers recap, some NFL stuff, of course, because we got an NFL coach coming up, and then my World Series preview and my prediction for the series. Let's start with the NBA. So last week, the NBA just dropped its 75th anniversary list, talking about the 75 greatest NBA players who ever played in the league. And of course, with every list, there's a lot of controversy and a lot of people that got snubbed. Well, you can't get them all in there. There's tons of players that have come through the league over the last 75 years. How can you fit them all? The hard part is the current players that are playing right now that are worthy and have the accolades to possibly be on. So most people think the biggest snub was Dwight Howard, and I totally agree. Dwight deserves to be on this list. And the comp for him, for someone that did make it, was Anthony Davis, who I do like. He is a Laker. He's a great player, often hurt, and lots of times he's falling down, which I still don't understand. But great player when he's right, just when he's healthy. But let me give you Anthony Davis's resume first, and then I'll give you Dwight's resume. So AD made the list with this resume. 8-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA, 4-time All-Defensive Player, 3-time block leader, NBA champion, 13,000 points so far, 6,000 rebounds, 1,000 blocks. That's AD's resume. It's good, but I don't think it's great yet. I think it's too soon to put him in. Here's Dwight's resume. 8-time All-Star, 8-time All-NBA to AD's 4, 5-time All-Defense to AD's 4, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. AD has 0. 5-time rebound leader. AD has 0 years where he led the league in rebounds. 2-time block leader. AD does have 3. Here's Dwight's numbers. 19,000 points, 14,000 rebounds, 2,000 blocks. So he's basically doubled him up in blocks and more than doubled him up in rebounds. And you're telling me that doesn't make the 75 list? Now, a lot of people can have opinions on Dwight, and trust me, he pisses me off too. He's bounced around since he left Orlando, and it just hasn't been good. But he did get to a finals that prevented LeBron and Kobe from facing each other in that 2009 finals. If you remember, the Magic and the Lakers played each other, and then the Lakers went on to win back-to-back championships. However, Dwight got that team there. So before Dwight started with all of his antics, he was a hell of a player and still has come up with huge numbers over the years. He got his championship. He totally deserves to be on this list. I think it's too soon for Anthony Davis. Not saying he's not going to make it, but maybe we can talk about the 100-year anniversary, and AD will probably be in that list. But Dwight got snubbed. Other names that popped up that were possible snubs were Klay Thompson, Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter, who I believe should be in. Now, Vince known for being a dunker and the best dunker, by the way. But I think Vince Carter should be in because he's 19th all time right now in scoring. How can you pass on a guy that's top 20 in scoring all time? Yes, he played forever, but you can make that argument for LeBron James, who's going to play next year probably in his 20th season. When you play for a long time, you accumulate numbers. So Vince Carter should be in. Kyrie, I don't know if he's better than Jason Kidd, better than Gary Payton, better than Russell Westbrook, better than Chris Paul. Is he better at Steve Nash? Is he better than all these guys? Does he have better handles and dribbling ability than those guys? Probably he does. But does he have the accolades over those dudes? Probably not. So I'm okay with Kyrie not being on this list. A lot of people are upset that Damian Lillard made it. I understand that. You got guys, like I mentioned, Westbrook, Harden made it, and Paul Pierce made it, was another iffy one. I'd say if I had to take a few people off, I would take Dame Lillard off, who's a hell of a player. But this is the top 75 of all time. Hasn't won a championship, hasn't won an MVP. He's been hidden in Portland his whole career. I don't think Dame should be on this list ahead of maybe Klay Thompson or Tracy McGrady or Dwight for that matter, and Vince. Other names that were notable that were thrown around: Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker from the Spurs dynasty, all potential to make the list. Pau Gasol, great player, 2-time champion. You could argue he could be in there, but is he, again, with Pau Gasol in the power forward conversation, you're not taking Tim Duncan out. You're not taking Kevin Garnett out. You got power forwards that are Moses Malone. You got big time names that are on this list that you just can't take out. So anyway, fun debate. I'm going to talk about this more, I believe, next week on my podcast or the week after with one of my sports podcasting colleagues, you could say, coming up. So we'll talk more about that. But I think it's a fun topic. I did some videos about it on my Instagram at Too Tall Sports Podcast. Follow me there to get my video stuff on that. But it's a hell of a debate, and lots of old guys made the list. And for those of you that remember Bill Sharman and Dave Cowens and guys like that, our generation never got to see them play. So it's hard to say, Wes Unseld. You got like these guys that they were on throwback jerseys. And if you're, 50 and younger or 45 and younger, we didn't get to see these guys play. So hard to say. But that's the NBA 75. Obviously, there's lots of controversy, but the big one to me was Dwight, who deserves to be on the list. I don't think AD should be on the list right now. Real quick Dodgers recap. Look, I think it's classic overmanagement, like what usually happens with the Dodgers and their front office. I don't know if it's Dave Roberts. I don't know if it's Andrew Friedman. I don't know if it's the analytics department. I don't know what it is, but obviously overusing Julio Urias as a starter and then a reliever and then try to have him start again. You can't expect a starter who pitched way more innings than he ever has in his career. He won 20 games this year, okay? Only person in the National League to win 20 games this year as a starting pitcher. And you think you can just throw him in because last year he was more of a reliever during the World Series and he was the hero in the 2020 World Series. You can't just throw in a guy that is completely worn down in the 8th inning of a crucial game and expect him in a high leverage moment to have his best stuff. Starters need time to get into and settle into the game. Relievers, it's a different mindset. Your hair is on fire as soon as you walk in on the mound. And as soon as you come in the game, you get 8 to 10 pitches, boom, you're ready to go. Starters have more time to settle in, and they're going to have hopefully 4, 5, 6, 7 innings to get settled. I don't think what they did to Urias was right. Obviously, Scherzer broke down at the end of the year. He had dead arm. I mean, the Dodgers had a phenomenal bullpen this year, which they usually don't have, but they had it this year. And Kenley Jansen was good. All the stuff was working in the bullpen. Trinan, Joe Kelly, Brusdar Gratterall. I mean, all these dudes, Vesia. They had all these relievers that were really good this year. And Dave Roberts went back to Old Faithful, which is what he used to do to Clayton Kershaw. I love him so much. I'm going to put him in the high leverage moment. And it's just not their role. So I'm unhappy with the way the game was managed. But look, the Braves are hot and they're doing great. So you really can't. What are you going to do? They hit better than we hit. That's just the bottom line. So kudos to the Braves. I'll leave the NLCS there. Obviously, big series. And I guess I'll just continue on that. I am watching game 1 right now as we speak. It's on the television in the other room. So the Braves jumped out to a huge early 5-0 lead after 3 innings. So my pick, I'll just tell you this without bias, before the series started, I thought Houston's offense was too good. They have home field advantage. I think the Astros are going to win in 6 or 7. That was my prediction before this game. So even if the Braves win game 1, they steal 1. I still think the Astros, I don't want them to win. Trust me. I hope the world is rooting against the Astros because there's plenty of cheaters still left on those teams, especially the high impact guys that were on that 2017 Cheaters World Series team. I'm rooting for the Braves. Even though they beat the Dodgers, I'm rooting for the Braves. They got a lot of good guys. They got a lot of cool stories. I had Tyler Matzik on my podcast about a year ago. Check out that episode. He's one of the high leverage relievers that they have on the Braves. Really cool guy from my area in Orange County. So I had go check out the Tyler Matzik episode about a year ago, season 1, I think it was still. But anyway, looking forward to a great series. Hope the Braves win. That's what I can tell you on that. Quick football notes. Miami's really bad, in case you didn't know. Still think Miami's in on the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, along with Carolina. My God, what happened to Sam Darnold? Started out the year 3-0, and now they've lost 4 straight, and he got benched last week for a guy that was in the XFL a couple years ago as a quarterback replacement. Don't know what's going on with Darnold. Maybe he's not as good as we thought. I don't know. I thought after the 3-0 start, here comes Sam Darnold, the real Sam Darnold. But the real Sam Darnold is sitting on the bench right now. So, yeah, I think Miami and Carolina, NFL trade deadline is next week. So about a week away. So we'll see what happens there with Deshaun Watson. If he moves or if any of these other quarterbacks move, we'll see. Quick side note. I don't know what's going on with Patrick Mahomes. He's leading the league in turnovers right now. I don't get it. I don't understand why he's having to do too much and overcome the defensive woes of Kansas City. They're one of the worst defenses by far in the league. Funny stat that happened over the weekend. Derrick Henry, the running back for the Titans, threw a touchdown. Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback, did not throw a touchdown. Yeah, things are not looking good in Kansas City right now. They're still 3-4. They're still alive. They're looking up at Oakland and the Chargers, but I'm sorry, not Oakland, Las Vegas and the Chargers. But man, I don't know what's going on with Kansas City. They got to fix their stuff right now. Tennessee's looking good. They're hitting their stride. They beat Buffalo. They beat Kansas City. So Tennessee's looking pretty good. I think that might be it. A funny game of the weekend was definitely watching Jared Goff return to LA against the Rams. That was fun watching Stafford and against his former team. I mean, clearly the Lions, that was funny to watch them empty their entire playbook. That was awesome. 2 fake punts, an onside kick early. I mean, they were outplaying the Rams for the first 2.5, 3 quarters. And then the Rams remembered who they were. And the Lions, of course, remembered that they're a winless team and remembered who they were. So anyways, fun weekend of football. Look forward to the World Series. Lots of surprise NBA teams right now. Bulls, Warriors, Hornets. Where are the Bulls and Hornets coming from? Anyway, weird to see the Ball brothers, Lonzo leading the Bulls, or at least one of the factors. And then, of course, LaMelo Ball, biggest surprise in the NBA the last couple of years, I think, coming out of the draft, leading the Hornets. So far, they're undefeated. But we'll see how the season goes. It's going to be fun. I'm going to be previewing some of those teams and more basketball takes as we get into the season. But we got a football guest today. So let's get to that right after my message from Vegas Sports Advantage, and look forward to my interview with Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator and also head coach, Mike Martz. Ladies and gentlemen, football is back, NFL and college, and all of your NBA and NHL and playoff baseball needs over the next few months. And the Too Tall Sports podcast is proudly brought to you by Vegas Sports Advantage. VegasSportsAdvantage.com. Use my promo code TOOTALL to get 25% off all of their texting packages. So what that means is they are going to text you right before a slate of games will start. Let's say for football Sunday, the games usually start, the first round starts at 10 a.m. They'll text you at about 9:50, 9:55. You got to be ready on your computer or on your app, wherever you bet your games, whichever sports book or sporting bets website you use your own. This is just a service that's going to text you their top picks based on the algorithm that they have set up. They wait till all the big sharp money comes in, and then they give you their best bet or two right before the games start at different times of the day. So they do text you the picks. You take care of them on your own and bet however much you want. They usually recommend 1 or 2 units of your normal, $50, $100, whatever you like to bet. Use your own judgment on that. However, VegasSportsAdvantage.com. Use my promo code TOOTALL. That's TOOTALL for 25% off all of the packages that they give you. They'll text you the picks. You get a certain number of picks, and then it'll run out, and you can use my promo code again if you want to. But 25% off. They're awesome. I use them. I make money off them all the time. I use my own sports book that I've chosen to put my bets on. But Vegas Sports Advantage is legit. They use their algorithms. Check them out. VegasSportsAdvantage.com. Promo code TOOTALL. All right, my interview is with Super Bowl winning champion coach Mike Martz. Yes, believe it or not, one of the architects of the greatest show on turf for the St. Louis Rams back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Really cool interview. Lots of stories about Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, who just got in the Hall of Fame, Torry Holt, all those guys, Hakim, those names. It's crazy. And so a really fun interview with Mike Martz today. Great stories about the Super Bowl runs and coaching against Andy Reid and Belichick, and also the current quarterbacks that he likes right now. So lots of great stuff with Mike Martz. Lucky to have him on. So really cool interview there. As always, you can follow me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. I do lots of video content there. I'm blowing up on TikTok, so I just repost those videos on Instagram. But I got good content, good relevant stuff now. So anyway, go check out my Instagram at Too Tall Sports Podcast. You can also follow me on Twitter at Too Tall Sports. Head over to my YouTube channel. If you're going to watch the interviews, we have both audio and video. So if you want both and you want to see me interview my guest, go over to our YouTube channel, Too Tall Sports Podcast. You can follow us there. And then you can subscribe. That would be awesome. Share it with a friend. Drop a comment, a like. A like goes a long way. So if you just hit that thumbs up on those videos, it goes a long way, and it can get sent out to all your followers and other people in your geo-targeted area, or however they do it. So anyway, hit up my YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell notification. We drop episodes every Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific time. On the audio side, we drop them even earlier in the morning, I think 5 or 6 a.m. So check out Apple Podcasts if you haven't done that already. Too Tall Sports Podcast on Apple. Check that out. If you haven't already, I say it every week, please scroll down to the 5-star section on Apple. Usually it's on the main page where the first few episodes show. You scroll down a little bit, find those 5 stars. Would really appreciate it if you hit the 5. And then also if you want to leave a review, that helps too. So you can leave a comment as well if you enjoy the show. I really appreciate that. We're on Spotify as well. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. We're also on Pandora, Amazon Music, Google Play, wherever you get your podcast. We are there. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. As always, thank you very much for listening. And I will see you after my interview with Mike Martz. Too Tall.
We had a pond.
Going crazy.
All right, welcome back to the Too Tall Sports Podcast. My next guest needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. He is a Super Bowl winning coach as the offensive coordinator and one of the architects of the St. Louis Rams back in the '99 Super Bowl and helped develop a bunch of Hall of Famers as part of the greatest show on turf. He's coached at the high school level, college level, and professional level for nearly 50 years. He's been a broadcaster and now a podcaster with one of my previous guests, Ron Pitts, with their new podcast, Run It Again. He is Mike Martz. Thanks for being on the show, Mike.
Thanks, Brett. Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Glad to have you. A lot to get to with you. And I just want to shout out Terry and Gus Farrat for helping me out to get you on the show. So thanks to them. Speaking of Gus, real quick, just to start the show, what do you remember about coaching Gus? He bounced around a lot in the league, but what do you remember about coaching him?
You know, I went to Washington the year after he went to the Pro Bowl, and Gus had just a big arm, as strong as arm as I've seen. We were a struggling football team at the time, and I know we played. I guess it was the Giants, and we were in overtime with 6-6, or he scored a touchdown. We missed the extra point, and he went over and banged his head on the wall.
Yeah. And
that was it for him. So I was with him a very, very short time.
Yeah. No, that's right. I think it was like 1 year, maybe 2 at the most.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, real quick, before we get to your backstory, your co-host on Run It Again podcast, Ron, told me to ask you about fishing. It's apparently one of your favorite things to do. You grew up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So I had to ask, as a kid, I'm sure you did fishing, but was that also something that kind of got you away from football, maybe like a mind clearing type of thing?
Well, we used to have a sport fishing boat here in San Diego where I live. And so we had that for about 8 years. It was a lot of fun. Got to be too expensive of a habit,
For sure.
The upkeep and all that sort of thing. But we enjoyed going out into the ocean and doing some deep sea fishing.
When did you move to San Diego?
We moved to San Diego in 1959 when I was a kid.
Okay.
We grew up in South Dakota. We moved out here when I was a boy.
Got it.
And so I really grew up in San Diego.
Okay, gotcha. And that's what I was going to get to next, because you did have a playing career. So you played high school football down in San Diego and eventually went to San Diego Mesa and then Fresno State. What do you remember about yourself as a player?
I wasn't a real confident player. I had to eat like crazy. And I was one of the first guys in that era that would lift a lot of weights. That's the only thing that gave me a chance.
Sure.
I was very slight. I know it's hard to believe now, but I was very slight. I wasn't strong. I wasn't fast. I had a lot of minuses, but the one thing I could do is catch football. I enjoyed catching a football. So that kind of kept me in it. I grew bigger and stronger and became a decent blocker at tight end, but I just enjoyed playing. I loved everything about the game.
For sure. And being a coach, you have to see the game a certain way, and you got to be really disciplined and prepared all the time. So at what point did you know, maybe during your playing career or after, that you were going to be like that? A coach was really fit kind of your personality?
Oh, I was a kid. I wanted to be a coach ever since I was about 14 years old. My first exposure to football, I loved football. Always did as a kid too. And I always admired the coaches. That was something that I looked up to. And I loved football and I want to be in it. And the only way to be in it after playing is to coach. So that kind of scratches that itch, so to speak.
For sure. You were a longtime assistant. Actually, I looked at when I was looking at your bio at Arizona State. You were coaching quarterbacks and receivers from 1983 to 1991. What do you remember about coaching at ASU and also just like the Pac-10 at that time?
The Pac-10 was really kind of dominated by SC and UCLA in those days, and,
Right.
and they were really kind of a perennial powerhouses. But we had speed, and that was when we came in. We beat Michigan in the Rose Bowl over there, and we ended up beating both UCLA and SC in LA at the same time, back to back, and that had never been done before. And the team that we had in the Rose Bowl was probably the best team in the country. And we got beat at the end of the year by a really bad Arizona team. We weren't paying attention, but that was a great football team. And there were so many players. I think from the starting 22-17 went into the league, there was a lot of really good players on that team.
Was there anyone notable? I didn't look at that.
Randall McDaniel was our right guard.
Okay.
Danny was our left tackle. He went to the Patriots. He played there for I don't know how many years, 15 years. And our left guard was in the league. Big Jimmy Warren, right tackle. The whole offensive line was from Arizona. 4 of them went in the league, and 3 of those 4 played for 10 years plus.
Wow. And that was because when I talked to Ron, he played for Terry Donahue. So they kind of dominated that era a little bit. Yeah,
they did, except that year. You know, when I first went to Arizona State, we played them in 92 over in the Rose Bowl, and we had them beat by 16 points with about 5 minutes to go. And he picks off a pass and runs it back for a touchdown for them to win the game. They go for 2, and they tied up. They didn't win, but they tied us. And I didn't realize it was him, until we started doing broadcasting together. I was telling him the story about UCLA. He said, "Yeah, that was me." I didn't realize it was Ronnie.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, not for you, but awesome for him at the time, I guess.
Right.
Speaking of 92, so you got your big break then, and the Rams were still in LA at the time. So tell us how that all came to be. You were a longtime college coach, and then you became the quarterbacks coach for the Rams in the early 90s. How did that all come about, going from college to the pros?
Well, I've been a coordinator all through college football and Arizona State too. I coached receivers and quarterbacks, and I was a coordinator. I've been at Arizona State for so long, for 9 years. I've been through 3 head coaches, and I was very comfortable there. Didn't do any, networking or whatever, and we all got fired. And I didn't know what to do. There weren't any jobs. It was one of those years nobody turned over in the Pac-10 that year. There were no jobs out west. I mean, none to be had, and everybody took jobs back in the east. I didn't know anybody back there, and certainly they didn't know me. So I didn't get a job. So here are, contracts up in July. So I talked to Julie, and I'd get up at 8 o'clock till 3 o'clock. She helped out at the school, so she and the kids would leave at 8, come back at 3, and I spent the whole day on the phone trying to connect and find a job someplace, doing something, handing out programs, anything to stay in football. So I talked to a guy that I knew up at the Jets, and he said, "Oh, by the way, call so-and-so over at Seattle. Chuck Knox is going to the Rams, and he used to be their coordinator. He's John Becker. He's now in charge of personnel." So I called John Becker, and I told him I don't care what it was. I just wanted to work. And he said, "Well, if you're in the area within the next 2 months or so, come out and see us, and we'll visit about it." So I got in the station wagon. I drove over there. His office at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I left in the wee hours of the morning and got there at 8 o'clock, and I was waiting for him at his door. So Chuck Knox, it took me 3 days trying to get in to see Chuck Knox, and I finally got in 2 weeks later. I drove over after going over time after time trying to get him seen. And Ernie Zampese was the offensive coordinator. I knew Ernie a little bit. I pleaded my case with Ernie. Ernie thought it would be great. So I went in to see Chuck Knox, and he had a newspaper up. And his chair was always higher than your chair, so he's always looking down at you.
Uh-huh.
And behind the newspaper, he's asking me these questions. And I said, "Listen, I'll come work free for you. And don't expect anything, just like chance," because they didn't have a tight end coach in those days.
Right.
I coached tight ends and helped with special teams. And he said, "All right, you don't ask anything. I won't give you anything. And when the season's over with, you do a good job. Either I'll hire or we'll get you a job." Well, that was more than fair for me. So it was just a question with 4 kids and a house payment over there, getting through that year. And we borrowed and scratched together some money, and we made it. And the very, very last day of the month, February, which is when all the kind of coaches stopped getting hired, he called me and offered me a job. My first game in the Big A there, I drove my little truck. I had to borrow my son's Mitsubishi pickup to go to work. I drove up to the guy in the gate there, and I said, I'm one of the coaches. He says, yeah, me too. Give me $13, So I had to pay to get in. And then I went to the stadium. I went down the tunnel there to go to the coach's dressing room. And the guy grabbed me and said, you're not a coach. You don't belong here. Get out. So finally, one of the equipment guys came by and said, no, he's actually one of the coaches. So it was difficult just to get in the stadium for my first game.
Wow. Yeah.
And then the next year got hired. And then 2 years later, we moved the team to St. Louis and moved the family back there. And then I left after 2 years there, went to Washington, spent 2 years there, and I came back.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. At least the early years, what were they were playing, the Rams were still technically in LA, but they're playing at Angel Stadium. What were those first few years like? I mean, you guys weren't, really in contention early on, but then when the team moved to St. Louis,
awful. We were awful.
There you go. Exactly.
And I thought that was the NFL. I didn't know. I'd show up and, guys would have their position meetings and then they'd start playing cards and there's just no sense of urgency. I'd be back behind the huddle and guys were talking about the car they bought last night or where they're going for on vacation in the season. There's nothing about football or winning. There was just nothing, it was just blah.
Just a bad culture.
Good players. We had some good players there. And it just, I thought, this is the NFL, but I didn't know. I thought maybe this way it is everywhere. It was contrary to how I was brought up in football, but there was no sense of urgency about anything. And it was real simple, which I thought was going to be the opposite. And when Ernie was there before, because he was just there a year, then he left and went to the Cowboys. So after that, things got really simple, and I didn't know. And we were really bad. And then I left, and we moved the team to St. Louis and changed coordinators, and then I coached the receivers, and we were better. Jack Riley was a coordinator. We started off pretty good 1 year, had a pretty decent season, won 7 or 8 games, and then we got fired there, and I went to Washington with Norv, and really with Norv was a terrific experience, and learned a lot of football from Norv.
And then as far as, how your relationship went with Dick Vermeil, he took over the team and then all of a sudden things started to change a little bit for you guys. The culture changed, I guess, as people like to say, and you guys started drafting some really good players. What do you remember about at least starting to work with Coach Vermeil and how you guys put it all together?
My meeting with Dick, my interview was down in New Orleans, and it lasted 8 hours. And we didn't take any breaks other than they had a bathroom right next to the meeting table. So we went in there and used the restroom. Nothing to drink, nothing to eat. It was football for 8 hours. It was my kind of, and I didn't know who Dick was. I heard bad things. He's hard on coaches. You're in the office forever, just doing worthless things and just stuff that wasn't true. And we got to talking, and he and I thought, we were identical in terms of our thought and our approach to things and how to practice and, the players and who, all those kinds of things. And I said, look, I have a good job with Washington. They just had changed. I just gotten a new contract offer from them. Things were going to be good. I knew we were going to be a good team. It wasn't that I wanted to get out of there at all. And I actually turned him down initially. And then he said, I said, look, if I do this, I know this has been hard on you, Dick. It's been hard to call plays and be the head coach. And I know you're worn out. If you'll just let me have it and go with it, that'll be great. And he did. But the key is Al Saunders, I guess it might have been, but we'd been there about 2 months in the spring, and we just started minicamp, and we went in and talked to Dick about the practices. And he said, look, Al's the one that really brought this out, and I was there to back him up, Dick was running double practices. He's just killing players, just wearing them out.
Yeah.
And just the whole approach to it, what he did at Philadelphia wasn't working with these guys. And we had good players, and they wanted to be good, but they were just beat up and wore out. And Dick said, to his credit, he said, it isn't working. I know I got to change. I guess I do need to change. He said, we'll do that. And we start giving guys days off We started going on shoulders and helmets instead of all those things. And then he said, you know what? Why don't we give Saturday night, players and coaches go home at night before the game. You sleep in your own bed, eat your own food, be totally rested for the next day. And that was phenomenal. So he completely did a 180 on his approach to it. And I think that was probably as big a difference as anything.
That's great to hear. It's, sometimes coaches get really, I'm sure, like they just get rigid and they want everyone to, or they think their way is the only way. So it's good to hear that he was able to change that up. I wanted to ask you about Kurt Warner, right? So Trent Green apparently was supposed to be the starter that year with you guys. He came over from Washington. You knew him probably a little bit at least. And then Trent gets hurt, and then Kurt Warner becomes a starter somehow. So how did that all come about?
So Trent was our third team quarterback at Washington, and I really liked him. And Norv and I thought he was the best one, and he didn't start until the second year. And, because of the injury that we talked about, he goes in the second half of the season and really plays well. His contract is up. They don't know. And I guess the GM there must have called me 4 times about him. And I kept telling him, sign him. He's the real deal, but he didn't want to pay him. So I just stopped talking to him about it. By now I'd gone to the Rams, and we didn't have a quarterback, and we fired the guy that was there. And they just didn't have a quarterback in the building. And there weren't any free agent quarterbacks to speak of. So Rich Gannon was the only other guy that we wanted. So between the two of them, then all of a sudden Rich gets signed with Oakland. And now here's Trent. So we sign him and bring him in. Now Trent and I were very, very close. And he knew the offense just as well as I did. So he really helped me put the offense in that spring. And this kid comes in, and my first day in the office, for instance, I'm unpacking my books and putting things on the shelves, and this guy comes in and he says, "Hey, coach, can I help you?" I said, "Sure." So he's sitting there for about an hour. He's helped me put things away and get situated. And I'm asking questions about how things are done. And we get done. I say, "Hey, thank you very much. What's your name?" He says, "My name's Kurt." And I said, "Oh, thank you, Kurt." And I thought he worked in the office or something. I didn't know. And then he says, "When are we going to start meeting?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I'm, Kurt Warner, one of the quarterbacks." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, Kurt, listen, I'll have to get back to you." I didn't know who he was. So we get going, and there was a real strong feeling about bringing Jeff Hostetler in, who I had at Washington. And Mike White, who had been the quarterback coach before, was really pressing this issue. Well, there wasn't anybody in the building at that point that was going to stand on the table for Kurt Warner. So Dick asked me about Kurt. I said, "Well, I don't know anything about him." He said, "Look, I don't know him. I don't know how good he can be. All I know is on the scout team last year, he completed just about every ball." I said, "Really?" And so he said, "Why don't you look at the World League tape on him?" And so I did. Here's what I saw in the World League. I saw this unbelievably courageous quarterback. They had no offensive line, making these ridiculous throws and getting killed and winning and putting, scoring and throwing BBs and putting them where these phenomenal throws, a la Mahomes, and so I said, "Well, boy, he's somebody we need to keep and see if he can play." So we did. And that spring, he demonstrated that he had some real skill and got better and better. But here's the thing about Kurt. He was like a sponge. He just wanted to know everything about what we were doing. And then he would assimilate it, go out and do it. And then he talked to Trent all the time. So there's a commitment out of Kurt to do what we were doing and to learn it, which is a big deal to me. So we get ready to break for the summertime in June. We have a big staff meeting, and Dick says to me, at the very end of the staff meeting, he said, "Mike, look, we got to make a decision on who our number 2 is going to be. We got Jeff Hostetler, will be here tomorrow if we want him to come in and be the 2, make Kurt 3rd, or is Kurt going to have to be the number 2? Because he can be a starter the next day." I said, "I understand that." He said, "Well, where do you feel?" I have no qualms about. This is what he said. He said, "Of course, whatever you say here, all of our jobs, rely on this decision."
Yeah.
So I just got to chuckle. I said, "I have no qualms about Kurt. From what I've seen from Kurt, I like him for these reasons and went over all the reasons." He said, "Okay, that's it." 99% of the people that were sitting in the room were really upset with that. So we go, of course, the season comes along, and 3rd preseason game, Trent gets hurt, in comes Kurt. his first pass in the game, I can tell you it was counter pass, 408 deep. And he made his play fake, went back, slipped and fell down on the ground. I thought, oh God, what have I done? Then he got going and started playing good, right?
Yeah.
But we went up to Detroit in the fourth preseason game, and we beat Detroit. And he had a good game first half. And this reporter, national reporter, just a short little guy, I don't know who he was because I just don't remember ever seeing him before his name. But he came in, he started screaming at me, "Who do you think you are? You got this great football team, potentially a great football team, and you got this nobody that can't play at quarterback." And said, "Well, who are you?" And he told me who he was. I don't remember who it was, but he shocked me, so I didn't remember his name. I took him back. I just told him to get out of the locker room. I didn't want to talk to him, but I wish I could see him now, right? So,
Oh yeah.
But I had a conviction about Kurt, and I think Dick did too. Eventually, he didn't right away, but eventually he did because he got to know when Kurt started playing. Dick really quickly became a big believer. But what I saw every day in practice came to fruition during the season. So everything that Kurt got, he earned. Nothing was given to him at all. I have great respect for him for that.
Definitely. And he's got that big movie coming out, I think during the holidays. So are you obviously, I think I heard you on another interview say you weren't a part of that at all, but as far as go ahead.
I talked to Chance Kelly, who plays me. John Wayne was dead, so he wasn't available. Chance Kelly, a wonderful guy. He talked to me quite a bit. It's Hollywood, so they make up a lot of these scenes that just never happened.
Sure.
And some of the stuff is just really corny. So he asked me about this big talk he was going to have with Kurt in my office, which never happened, but it didn't matter. And the language, something about what makes you think that you can do this. Well, you never talk to a player like that. I mean,
yeah.
I said, come on, Chance. This just never happened, first of all. But if you're going to do it the way it would have been done, And so they cleaned it up a little bit. I don't know how much, but he said it came out better than it would have originally been.
That's good. Yeah, well, I'll definitely check it out. I'm sure I know now. Of course, it's going to be dramatized a little bit, but good for Kurt.
It's a great story that needed to be told.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just going from grocery store worker to the quarterback and winning Super Bowl winning quarterback and all that stuff, Hall of Famer, everything. It's doesn't happen. So,
the amazing thing about that though is, Brett, is the conviction he had about himself. And he had every opportunity to quit and stop.
Yeah,
and he didn't. He just stayed at it and stayed at it. He just needed that door to crack open just a little bit.
Yeah, that's all you need sometimes, someone to believe in you. And you were one of those guys, so that's awesome. I want to talk about the magical run you guys went in 99. You guys went 13-3 in the regular season. You beat Tampa Bay, coached by Tony Dungy and Herm Edwards at the time, former ASU guy. And then you guys go on to beat the Titans in the Super Bowl, who just came off the Music City Miracle. And Kevin Dyson was 1 yard away from winning. Just that whole playoff run. What do you remember about that leading up and then eventually the Super Bowl?
Well, the chemistry on the team was hard to imagine. I know after about the fourth game, I was talking to one of the beat writers there, and he was saying just the energy and the enthusiasm is just different than everybody in the league. And I said, you know what? And I told him, as I said, we're in a special place in time and we'll never be here again. And I think our players know that, the coaches know that. And so we're going to make the most of it. We realized that it was a real special thing every week, and how good if you get a ball when you're a kid, two kids who can throw the ball the furthest, right? And that's what it was. We're just seeing how far we can go. Just, pedal to the metal every week, just so much fun.
Yeah, no, it sounds awesome. As far as the Super Bowl goes, like I mentioned, you guys beat the Titans in the Super Bowl. It was a good game. What do you remember about the game itself, how it went, what it was like to coach in the Super Bowl? Because I think that was your first one, right?
Yeah, I didn't, to me at that point, we only had 1 week to prepare. I was exhausted. We were all exhausted, when I walked on the field before the game, you can feel the electricity, but when you're coaching that long, you're so focused on what you're doing. It just didn't seem different to me than any other game. I know it sounds corny, but
right.
I thought I'd get out there and just be, and it was kind of a magical thing and all that, but it was like playing a Monday night game to me, with all the media and all that stuff. So I was kind of surprised. I was just focused on what we were doing. What surprised me is on the first play of the game, Jeff Fisher, they just came after us with everybody on the first play. And what people don't know is we shifted to a formation and put Marshall as a single receiver away from everybody. They stuck a linebacker out there with no help. He ran a slant. He'd have gone 80 with it, but the pass rush, somebody tipped the ball away. We could have opened up with an 80-yard pass play.
Oh, wow.
But in that game, there had to be 80 to 90% pressures in that game, it seems. And so you can't get the running game going. They just stuff you, they're just stunting and twisting into. If you hit a crease, you're gone with it. But, you're going to run 10 runs and all of a sudden you're going to get a good one, right?
Yeah.
Well, the matchup for us was our wide receivers on their secondary because there was no help. There's no zone. So our guys one-on-one against their guys. I'm going to take that bet every time.
Definitely, especially, and one of those guys you just had on your podcast recently was Isaac Bruce, just was inducted into the Hall of Fame. I mean, you worked with him for a long time. What do you remember about coaching Isaac Bruce?
Oh, man, you don't have enough time. Probably the most competitive individual I've ever been around. In fact, easily is. And and that's not to say that Marshall and Kurt, no, they're not competitive, because that's not the case. He was a freak at it. I mean, he just winning was absolutely everything to him. Very unselfish, to the point of a fault almost. And his whole approach to the game and life in general. He's just a great player. He's just a great man. His work ethic is beyond reproach. I used to have to take him out of the huddle in practice. You know what I mean? Just so he had enough at game, because he want to take every snap.
That's awesome. Those are the guys you want on your team, man. Those are the warrior type guys that you want every week. Before we get to some other players, I did want to talk about the 2001 season. So you guys get back to the Super Bowl. You went 14-2 that year. You end up beating the Eagles with Donovan McNabb, coached by Andy Reid, and then you eventually lose the Super Bowl to Brady and Belichick and the Patriots. What do you remember about that season?
That was the best team that we had. That was one of the best, in my opinion, it's one of the best team the league has ever seen. It really is. I think what happened to us is when you go back and look at the schedule in 99, we had the best schedule. It's the worst lineup of teams in the league. We were playing the lightest schedule in the league out of 32 schedules. In 01, it was the toughest schedule. We had the number. I mean, everybody we played was either in the playoffs or were in the playoffs last year. They're opening up with Philadelphia, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a tough schedule. So we had to have it every week. And we'd been together now for 3 years, and we were rolling. We were really rolling. I think we'd have won that Super Bowl. We fell down 3 times with the ball in terms of, interception for a touchdown. You turn the ball over 3 times against a really good team, you got no chance. You just, we come back, tie up 17-17 with a great chance. We have a chance to get the receiver out of bounds, keep him in bounds rather, at the end of the game. And we don't. He gets out of bounds. If we keep him in bounds, they can't kick a field goal. It's done. It's over. So, and we got the momentum in terms of we just wanted to get on the field one more time on offense, because at that point, the biggest, and this is a real burr in my side. I couldn't sleep the night before, and usually I sleep like a baby. Before the game, I was beside myself because I wanted to open up that game in 2 minutes and just wear that front out. And I didn't do it. I wish I had. And what got us going finally in that game was going to 2 minutes, But there are some other things in that game we want to stay away from discussion-wise, but we played well enough to win it. Had we not turned the ball over, there's no question we win the game. That pick six, we had a right tackle that just joined us a week before, and they brought the will linebacker, and he blocked down instead of fanning out. And it's just our base protection, and he blew it. He comes through and hits him as he's throwing it. It's a pick six. So, if we had our regular guy in there, we're winning the Super Bowl. That's the way it goes. But it's the same thing with Kansas City. They lose both their tackles in that Super Bowl. They asked me before the game what I thought, and I said, well, they're not going to win this game. They both tackles are gone. And these guys aren't remotely what they had there before. So I think that was the determination of the game, that one play, not having our right tackle was the determining factor in terms of the outcome of that game.
Right.
We sprayed the field with paint to make it look real green. So Torry ran a slant route on a blitz, and he threw the ball, and Torry fell down. The corner is way off, and the ball hits the corner in the chest, and he runs back. So those are the things that we had to overcome. And against a good team, that's hard to do.
And speaking of, so you mentioned Kansas City last year. So Andy Reid still coaching. What was it like to face him then? And what are your thoughts like? I think the players seem to love him. You've coached against him. What was it like coaching against Andy Reid?
Well, first of all, they play with an energy that's unusual in the league. I know that sounds silly, but it didn't make it. Every week they'd bring it. And Jim Johnson was the coordinator in those days. And they were what I thought we were. They coached the details. The players were well-schooled and everything, and they were just really tough to beat now. But Andy, we came to the league together as head coaches about the same time. I got to know him a little bit. Our wives got to be pretty good friends. I don't know if you'll find a nicer man in your life than Andy Reid. More of a gentleman, more of a caring, loving guy as Andy Reid is a head coach. You think the traditional thought of what a head coach is. Well, that's not Andy now. Andy's a great man. Then he's a football coach.
Yeah, that's what it seems like on the outside too. Just listening to him talk and everything. So that's awesome. If I had to ask you about Tom Brady, you coach against him, like you mentioned, the Super Bowl, and he's still playing now. What are your thoughts on going against Brady? I know you weren't on the defensive side, but still, just like what your thoughts are on him overall.
Tom would make these incredible throws, and they're right on time. He threw a touchdown in the Super Bowl on a little post corner down there. He held it just long enough and just laid it out there for the receiver. And as a rookie, he did things as a rookie that you'd see a 10-year pro do, So he's been unusual in everything that I've seen him do. Right now, I was talking to Ronnie about this. When I watch his delivery right now, he's faster with the ball coming out now than he was as a youngster. His arm strength hasn't diminished. The things that you keep waiting to happen with him haven't happened. Other than his foot speed, you can see he doesn't have the mobility. He never was a real mobile guy, but
right.
His command of the game, and the fact that he's never tired of the game. I think guys, when they start to retire, they start thinking about they're retired. I don't think retirement's ever come into his thought process. So I think that he's just unusual in every way you can imagine a player being.
Yeah, no, he's whipping it real quick too. I agree with you. His arm still looks just fine. As far as some of the other guys, I mean, the unsung heroes a little bit. I know Torry Holt's a big name, but like Ricky Proehl, Hakim, you had some big name receivers other than Isaac Bruce. So what about those other guys that you got to coach in that receiving group?
So Ricky Proehl, when I got there, was a leader in receptions the year before with like 50. And the feeling there was he's not good enough. Hakim, when I came in there, he's too little, he can't play. We need to get rid of him. Those are the kinds of the thoughts of the previous, guys there.
Yeah.
I had Oz in the Senior Bowl. I knew what Oz was. I knew he was from San Diego State. I knew Ricky Proehl. It was just giving him the opportunity. And all good players need is an opportunity. You create the right environment for them, give them an opportunity, they'll just excel. And Ricky, whenever he had an opportunity to make a play, he made it. He was our third down guy. When he had to have third down, he was the guy that could wiggle free against man-to-man and then find that hole in zone. And then Oz 101, and nobody could cover Oz. His quickness and celebration is laughable. He made some plays that I had to run it back the next day on tape and keep looking at, trying to figure out how he did that. He caught a drag coming across, I think it was against the Giants, and he made four guys miss, and then he just walks into the end zone with it, We had against the Falcons, our kicker tore his hamstring on the opening kickoff. So we had no field goal. So right before the half, it's a fairly close game. I think we're beating the Falcons maybe by 7 or 10 points, but it's a close game. It's a hard-fought game. We have 4th and goal from the 25-yard line. But we can't kick a field goal, right? So we sent 4 verticals. He throws it to Oz in the middle. He makes the nickel miss, both safeties missing, he backpedals into the end zone with the ball. How do you do that? Who does that? Great call, right?
Yeah. You got to have the athletes to make those kind of calls, though. And obviously you knew what you had with those guys.
Just give them the
Yeah.
opportunity,
Yeah,
Give
for
them the
sure. And then, of course, the greatest show on turf had Marshall Faulk involved. That was part of a big package with him. What do you remember about what he did for your offense as well?
Well, Marshall wasn't as advertised. Marshall was the situation. Andy, word coming out of there was he's a malcontent. He's this, he's that. He was anything but. My first meeting with the offense, Marshall comes in, sits down, and he's got a notepad. He's got colored pencils. He's got protractors. He's got everything sitting there ready to go for the meeting. So I sat in front, and I'm excited, and I'm not paying attention to the players and what they have. I'm just getting ready to go. So I give my opening statement to the team. I'm all geeked up, ready to go, and he stands up and says, "Coach, can I interrupt just a second?" I said, "Sure." He turns around and says, "I see there's some guys in here, some veterans too, that don't even have a pencil or a pad to write on. Are you kidding me? How are we going to be a good football team without this kind of preparation?" And I said, "Good point, Marshall. Thank you." And they go get their stuff and they come back. And that says volumes. When Kurt was the starter in our opening game against Baltimore, Kurt became the starter. In the first 7-on-7 session, Kurt goes 0 for 8. And it wasn't just 0 for 8. I mean, it was an ugly 0 for 8. Skipping the ball into the ground, throwing a helicopter over the guy's head, just ugly throws. He's just so tight and wound up. He couldn't complete a ball from 6 feet away. Something was bad was going to happen with it. And I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, what have we done? I said, how can I get this guy to loosen up a little bit? That's not who he is, and I didn't know what to do. Marshall comes in the huddle and he says, "We got 2 plays left in this period, in this 7-on-7 session." He said, "Coach, can we start this all over?" I said, "Sure." I said, "What do you need? What do you mean?" He said, "I just want to talk to Kurt." So go right ahead. So I step out of the huddle. All the guys are in the huddle. He says to Kurt, he said, "Look, Kurt, you're going to be the quarterback here, no matter what. No matter what happens, you're the quarterback. Nobody's going to replace you. There's no pressure on any of that stuff. It's your job, period. We believe in you. We got your back no matter what. We know how good you can be. So just go play." Ball never hit the ground after that, He just, boom, that was it. That's Marshall. I'm walking out to practice one day. We're getting ready to play. Jimmy Johnson had all those blitzes, and we're getting ready to play Philadelphia. And Marshall comes out and he taps me on the shoulder and says, "Hey, how are we going to pick up this blitz?" He describes the blitz. They hadn't run that blitz in a year. They hadn't run it in a year. But I go back and I'd seen the blitz, so I knew about it. And it's a blitz that's virtually, you got to change a lot of things in your rules to block this blitz, right? And I said, "I'm not going to worry about it. They did it a year ago. But what if they do it?" I said, "If they show it, call timeout, and you and I will discuss it." I said, "Marshall, what's the matter? You're giving me a headache here, But he did his homework, man. He goes back years on every opponent. He was ready for whatever they brought, He was the first guy in the league that went coast to coast in pass protection. In the old days, you go, okay, you're going to check this guy and release. So you could figure out guys don't bring certain combos of backers they don't bring. So we just have him go coast to coast, work across. He did that on his own against San Francisco, saved us on a sack, and we threw a touchdown to Isaac. He did it on his own.
Wow.
He could figure that out. So there's so much about him, aside from his extreme skill. It's his knowledge of the game, it's unselfishness. Everything about Marshall is special.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear that. And you don't get to, you don't get to hear those nuggets about preparation and stuff. That's what makes the good players, separates the good from the great, for sure.
No question about it.
Yeah. As far as, so I want to ask you, so you've been a head coach also. I just was curious from someone that, not in the locker rooms and stuff or like that, or the daily prep, what's it like, the difference of preparation from offensive coordinator to head coach? I know you got a lot more to worry about, but what was the difference like for you?
I did not have a coordinator to turn it over to. So I was a coordinator. It was very hard. It wore me out.
Yeah.
Eventually, that's what got me sick. I just was worn out. And it was dumb. I had a chance to hire Norv Turner one time, was a good friend. It would have been great. And I didn't do it. The chemistry we had as a staff was kind of special with the players. I just felt like somebody from the outside coming in. I worried about that because we had a good thing going. I didn't want to change it. But in the end, it just I just wore myself out at it because I was really kind of coaching the quarterbacks. I was doing all the offensive stuff, doing the scripts for the offense, and that's trying to be a head coach. I just got tired.
Yeah. No, I hear you. As far as other than Kurt Warner, you've worked with some other quarterbacks too. I was just curious what it was like. You had Mark Bulger, you had John Kitna, you've had other guys, even Jay Cutler. What was it like to work with other quarterbacks, and maybe what you remember about some of those guys?
I'm a big fan of those guys that are talented. They kicked around, told they can't play, they're not good enough. And, guys like Trent Green, he bounced around his Chargers, his 6th-round pick, just kept working and finally made it. Kurt Warner, Mark Bulger, John Kitna. These guys were all distant guys that were told, you're just not good enough. You're a backup at best or a third guy kind of a thing. And they're anything but. They've got some qualities to them that make them extremely potentially good players. There's a difference between those high round picks and those kind of guys. There's no question about it. There's a certain sense of entitlement, with some of those other guys that you would expect.
Yeah.
And yet they're still no different than these other guys, and you just got to treat them all the same.
Yeah, definitely. Last couple things here. So as far as you're now back in the first time in the podcast game, it's called Run It Again with Ron Pitts again. So what got you back into the podcast world, and what made you want to jump on one of these shows?
Ron's a good friend, and we're at Fox together. I worked a year with Ronnie. We were in the booth together doing NFL games, and when we left, we stayed in touch. And Ron wanted to get something going again, and I don't really think about that business. I wasn't good at it. Broadcasting is not something that I was good at. So the podcast sounded fun because you always had a guy in your ear in those deals saying, okay, wrap it up, or talk about this or talk about that. Okay, that's too much. All this annoying stuff. You can't just talk about something, And so Ronnie said, let's do a podcast. Let's make it different where we talk about what we want, the things that are important, give people a different perspective from a player's and a coach's perspective that they normally don't hear. I thought it was a heck of an idea, so that's what we're doing.
That's awesome. No, that's really cool. As far as current quarterbacks go, who do you enjoy watching? You got what's that?
Herbert.
Yeah. You know what? I just went to the Charger games against the Browns this past weekend. That guy Herbert's unbelievable, man. He really is.
I will say this: when he came out, and I'm not tooting my horn, but I told Ronnie, and on the show when he came out, we talked about the quarterbacks coming out. I said, this kid at Oregon's better than all those other guys. I'm just telling you, he is. He doesn't miss anything. He's athletic. He's just on target. You just don't hear much about him, and I don't know why. And then I know the quarterback coach at the Chargers, right? Shane Day, rather. And Shane and I worked together in a couple of places, but I talked to Shane the other day, and he said, Coach, you'd love this kid. He's just all football. He lives in a little place next to the facility, so he can get to work real quick. And he doesn't do interviews. He doesn't want to do any of that stuff. He doesn't have a Nike deal. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have all. He's just all about football and winning. That's all he is. I want to marry him.
Let me just say this. I don't know. I didn't play organized football. And when I saw him at Oregon, when I watched that Rose Bowl, and I was just like, I don't see it. I just don't. Maybe it was the offense there, whatever. Maybe I didn't know what I was looking for, but it seemed like he ran a lot more, and maybe just the way instead of throwing. So maybe you could tell me what I wasn't seeing.
Yeah, I can tell you what. They're so stupidly simple at Oregon, and they're very good at it.
Yeah.
But it was so simple, and he was so cuffed. And I knew that about what they're doing. I know what they were doing on offense. And he did what they asked him to do, and he did the best he could. But he's such a smart kid. He's so much more than what he did at Oregon.
Yeah.
And I had this conviction about him. And I said, somebody's going to get a great player. When the Chargers drafted him, because I'm San Diego, right? Superchargers. So
yeah.
I've been a Charger fan since I was a little kid. So I was excited to see the Chargers get him.
Have you been up to SoFi yet? Stadium?
No, I won't go to a game. I just, maybe this has been my personality my whole life. Large crowds, it bothers me.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I just don't like getting into that environment.
Sure. Much easier to watch on TV too. You get all the angles, you get replays, you get all, yeah.
Plus I can watch like 6 games at a time,
That's true. Yeah. What about guys like Josh Allen and Mahomes, like this young new crop of big arm athletic guys? Lamar Jackson, maybe.
freaks. I mean, they're kind of, they always been out there, just never really been developed, if you will, and Josh has really come a long way. Now, Lamar Jackson, last night watching him, I was dumbfounded because he's never in his career shown the ability to do what he did last night. I could see him scan and go through some read progressions. He stayed in the pocket when he could easily take it off and run. He stayed and made throws. He's making accurate throws, sidearm over his head. He's dropping it in there, over there. He didn't miss. He was, last night is not the Lamar Jackson that I'd seen in the past. And his footwork was so bad in the past. He's off balance. He can't miss some throws.
Right.
Footwork is really well. Somebody's really worked with him. His footwork's good. He's in the pocket. He's trying to, as a passer, he's trying to be a good passer. He can always take off and go with the ball. That's what I see. And then, Taylor down in Arizona, that's ridiculous what he can do. His quickness and his speed, It's just,
are you talking about Kyler Murray?
I mean, Kyler Murray, yes. Sorry, Kyler Murray, yes. And, I watch him play, his instant acceleration, and he is a good passer. He does go through those, he does all those things, but his ability just to instantly separate Hakim with a football in his hand, as a quarterback,
Yeah.
Amazing.
Do you think, this last thing on this, do you think it would be tough for you? It's definitely a new way of letting them be the athletic selves versus traditional pocket passing. Like, how do you feel like you would do you just have to let them do what they do best kind of thing?
That's always been in the league though, Fran Tarkenton, there's been a lot of those. Joe Montana was one of those. Montana and Mahomes are very similar. But I don't know if you know the way Joe was when he came to the league, he ran a lot.
Okay.
He was all over the place. That's been around for quite some time. There's a number of quarterbacks through history that have done that. It's just over the years, those kinds of guys had been playing other positions. Now through high school and college, they've been encouraged to run and do all those kinds of things. So they've kind of showed up. But the guys that seem to keep winning Super Bowls, though, are those guys that can really throw the ball. No matter how good a runner you are, first and foremost, the premise has to be you have to be a good passer. That's why I didn't know about Lamar. And after last night, he is that.
Yeah. He's still young. He's only, I think, 24 years old. It's amazing. These guys there's so much expectation so soon on them, and they have to be good right away.
I think it was impressed upon him too, somehow, that, Daniel Jones at the Giants. You run and you put your head in there and shoulder down there. You're just not gonna play very long in this league.
Right.
Michael Vick kind of a thing. They did impress upon him, and I don't know who did it or how they did it. You better be a passer first before you do anything else.
Yeah.
And he is.
Yeah. The podcast called Run It Again. They got new episodes out. Do you guys do it weekly, or is it every other week?
Yeah.
Weekly. Okay. Episodes out weekly. Where can they find you guys?
Just wherever you get on your podcast. It's on YouTube. They have a couple formats out there, but if you type it in wherever you get your podcast, you'll get it.
Okay. Awesome. Coach, I really appreciate it. Great stories. Thank you for getting on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
You got it. My thanks to Super Bowl winning coach Mike Martz. Please go check out his podcast with my other former guest, Ronnie Pitts. I think you guys will enjoy it. It's a lot of football talk, and it's called Run It Again podcast. So go check out Run It Again podcast with Mike Martz and Ron Pitts. Thanks again to Coach Martz. A lot of great stories there. Hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, you can follow me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. Check out my videos there. You can engage in the content. Leave me a comment. I'll respond back. I always do. So hit me up there. If you need to email the show, that'd be awesome too, just to say hello or tell me, you like it or you don't like it. Any feedback you have, you can email me at tootallsportspodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter at Too Tall Sports. You can check me out there. On YouTube, please subscribe if you haven't already. If you're watching the interviews, even if you're not watching them, you can subscribe there as well. I do video content every Thursday on there. I'll put my 2 cents in a separate video just if you want them 10 minutes or 15 minutes of me giving my sports takes of the week. Check out my 2 cent segment on YouTube as well, Too Tall Sports Podcast. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, do it all. Like it, share it, comment, all that stuff. I'd really appreciate it. On the audio side for Apple Podcasts, if you could, just hit the 5 stars. When you find my page, scroll all the way down, hit those 5 stars. Really appreciate that. Helps the show grow and get some more exposure. If you leave a review below the stars, you can get even more bonus points from me. So I really appreciate that. And then we're on Spotify as well. We're on Google Play, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcast, we should be there. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it.